afternoon, sports world, from all around the globe, from Cape Cod to Cancun, from Tampa to Tahiti, from Vegas to the Vatican. I'm your host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, The Breakfast Bankroll. Today, myself and my co-host, Scott E. Webb, will try to break down last night's madness as the dogs were howling. And we'll take a deeper look at today's menu and see if we can get you leading in the right direction. So without further ado, the man from Tampa himself, the Palm Tree State, Mr. Scott E. Webb. Scotty, my brother, what is up?
Good afternoon, Jeff. How are you today?
I'm doing well. We survived yesterday's madness, and I have a couple questions to talk to you about. But wow, the dogs were barking, and it was kind of funny because it looked like there was some perfect storms there. And Vegas made sure, if you thought the same way, that you were going to pay for them. We'll go into further length on those as we progress here. But I wanted to make a statement, and I just want your overview here of your thoughts. The All-Star break is over. The trading deadline is over. So now, not just the public, the degens, but Vegas and the sports books and casinos can now sit back and take a look and say, okay, the market's set. It's buyers versus sellers. Everyone can see who bought, who sold, and let's make them pay for it. And yesterday was the start of what I think the next month is really going to be like in this regards. We have a site that we use that has the true line, and you also, when you do your numbers, you have the true line. And then what we have then is, let's say, the overnight and the opening line to the sharps. So we'll take a perfect example, like yesterday, the Jays, where that line from the true line till the overnight to the release point moved 70 cents, and the same as the Yankees. And if you want to pay for these high-priced, quote-unquote, playoff teams or potential playoff teams, you're going to have to pay for them. And when we get into yesterday's show, games, there were some dogs that were just howling. Thoughts moving forward?
Yeah, I think this is a normal thing. I think that at this point in the season, most bettors are going to be betting on the teams that are in the playoff run, and teams that aren't in the playoff run they think aren't going to show up. You can have two teams that aren't in the playoff hunt, and you can actually get a pretty good line on some of these teams. So what ends up happening, though, is if you can't make your own line and you can't get a reasonable number, you don't understand where the numbers come out at. So for example, in today's matchups, you have Houston is traveling to the Dodgers. The Dodgers are sitting there waiting, chomping at the bit to get to them. But my number is $25 off of what the Dodgers are favored at. The Dodgers are, I think they're minus 175 or something crazy like that. And my number says they should be about 150. So that tells me that what's happening with these teams and what's happening with the odds makers is if you want to play these big favorites, they're going to let you play them. They're just going to charge you to play them. And they do this every year. And they sit back and they watch you do it. And days like yesterday where I think there was only 8 games, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9 games. I think 7 of the 9 games were minus 200 or more. And those minus 200 numbers lost quite a bit. And in one case, I think the Yankees were minus 300 in some places. So you sit here and you look at it and you got to figure this out, is that it's not necessarily wise to go the opposite way of the minus 200 because they don't necessarily win that often either. But when they win, it's a great thing, right? But you have to play that all through the season, or at least now through the whole time, to make it worth your while to do. because if you play it 8 times, or I'm sorry, 10 times, you have to win twice. And if you played it yesterday, you would have been in good shape. But you're going to lose 8 times out of 10, and still make a little bit of money on the other side. So you still have to play it a whole bunch of times before you make any money to get those 2 wins. And I don't think that's necessarily what you want to do either. You pick your spots on those, but I think there's better ways to attack this. You've talked about it on this show for I don't know how many months and weeks now. You can do things with totals. You can do things with team totals. You can change first fives. You can do minus a half a run, plus a half a run. You can do all kinds of different things to change the perspective of what you're doing without getting crazy. And I would also tell you that I saw a lot of stuff yesterday out there in the I don't know what kind of world you want to call it. We'll just call it the social media world, where you have a lot of people out there that have opened up their services, so to speak, and they are doing the -1.5 home favorites. And how many of that happened yesterday? Please, if you're doing those things, understand what you're doing. Sometimes it's worth it but you have to justify why you're doing it. And it's a rare occasion that you do that. And you do not want to give up your last at bat. You just don't. So please don't fall into those traps. It's not the right thing to be doing.
And I want to thank you for that, because what happens, I think, is people want the action and they're just trying to explain to themselves, how am I going to get into that game? Perfect example yesterday, the Yankees coming home after a 3-game sweep. They're bringing their 2 new lefty toys back to home. They're facing a righty. They're facing Baltimore, and they even wheeled out their new shiny toy, Andrew Haney. Different team, same result. But the point is, the Yankees team total was even at 5.5. So, if you break everything out, I'm not laying the 300, okay? And if you saw the light and says every time you take a home team minus a run and a half, you're already cutting your odds back because you're only guaranteed 24 outs. And they'll justify it because they'll get the walk-off 2-3 run homer or the grand slam, and therefore I told you so. But I personally want to thank the sports books yesterday, because I worked endlessly trying to figure out what we could do. If there was anything, we pass. Couldn't get into the Toronto game first 5 because minus a half run was -190. Couldn't get into the Yankees first 5 minus a half run. That was -190. I thought the Mets game you could have got into. The kid McGill had been pitching great, but the numbers reeked. The first half under over was 3.5. So if I'm giving up a half run, thanks, but no thanks. I'm not going there. So we went into the Giants, and I know DeSclafani hadn't been pitching well. And I'm just like, the first half under over was 5.5. I was like, okay, 3-2, 4-2. Okay. So we're up 2-1 going into the top of the 5th. We get a bases loaded walk to make it 3-1. Change pitches. Here comes Dickerson batting .218, and I'm like, please just don't hit into a double play. Hits a grand slam. So now we're up 7-1. Breezing, thanks for the win. And then here comes DeSclafani in the 5th. Base hit, homer, 7-3. Gets an out. Base hit, homer, 7-5. They yank him. We sweat. We win. But the market is crazy, and you could not be more right, because these guys are going to find a way to get into those games because they can't lose.
Yeah, these can't lose games. And my father, he likes to just gamble stuff on the side and do different things. And for whatever reason, he doesn't like to listen to me. I sit here and do this. I do this basically for a living, and he doesn't even. He just wants to do his own thing. So I set up an account for him and do whatever. And he bets $2 or $3 here and there and doesn't do a whole lot. But so he was getting tired of betting these $2 and $3. So then he jumped them to $10 games. And then he's like, you know what? I'm just going to make 3 bets. And he had done fairly well for most of the season. So he's got $300 in his account. And he's got, okay, I'm going to put $100 on this game and this game and this game, all minus 200. Guess what? They all lost. Now I ain't got no money. And that is what Everybody does, and that is the trap that you get into, because the sports book's going to be there. They're going to be there tomorrow, and they're going to be there next week, and they're going to be there next month. They're going to have a whole list of options for you to bet, and then you're going to sit there and get to a point where your discipline of what you've been working on for managing your bankroll for all this time goes out the window, and then all of a sudden you got no money. And this is a perfect time for baseballers to lose all their money. And all we talk about is build your bankroll for football, right? And then all of a sudden, here they go. They ain't got no money. So you got to be real careful this time of season, and you got to pick your spots, and you got to know what you're actually betting on, because the truth is you really don't ever want to pay more for favorites than you should be. And if you can get that understanding, then you can be looking at lots of dogs, because there's value in the dogs because the favorites are overpriced.
So yesterday, favorites, dogs 4-4, overs 4-4. Big dogs at cash: Marlins plus 150, Indians 229, Mariners 178, and the Orioles 252. So it's just the perfect example where I can guarantee you this. There's someone down there in Vegas right now shopping around at a new corner to think about, building a new casino and resort, because they know this month's going to be brutal. And then in comes football, where we all know everyone knows everything and they really know nothing. So with that said, let's bring up today's board. Some interesting games, and I'll do what we did yesterday. The quick checkbox where we take the overnights and we wake up in the morning and we take a look at what the sharps did, and then we show you what the numbers are that were released, and some eye openers as usual. But right off the bat, Scotty, Chicago at Colorado, the intriguing thing to us initially is Freeland versus Davies. Colorado opened up minus 150. Now we know the Cubs were sellers, and Colorado at home is a different beast. The line has since dropped to 135, but our initial thought there is the line opened up at 150 for a reason, and they're getting what they wanted, and then that's some Cub money there. LA at Texas, we have a reverse line movement and a flip there. Texas opened up at minus 104. Currently, we got the Angels minus 119. That's Suarez versus Lyles. Kansas City at the White Sox, what is expected? A correction overnight. Line opened at 185 and currently at 237. So right there alone is a 52-cent move. This one kind of intrigues me, Scotty. Minnesota at Cincinnati, Maeda versus Male. Cincinnati only opened up at 136 and now currently 120. Some nice reverse line movement on the Twinkies, who have been our DNP. They just been our kryptonite all year. And the game that we talked about earlier today, Houston at the Dodgers, McCullers versus Buehler. Buehler has just been lights out. Opened at 152. And in your eyes, that was your number. That's where Pinnacle had it. It's been pushed to 172. So there's a perfect game there. Are you buying the sizzle or the steak? Because there's a lot of, we got them at our home park. Thanks for the trash cans. We'll show you. And so that's what we checked off early. Any thoughts, anything that sticks out on some of those games that we talked about there?
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting, that Colorado game, because how many times is the Colorado Rockies, who is possibly one of the worst teams in the national, well, they are one of the worst teams in the National League, going to be a big favorite like that? And I was interested because I haven't been able to break down Freeland for a little while, and I got to look at him again today. And to be quite honest with you, I was not happy with what I saw. So it's kind of an interesting thing there, where Davies has been getting hit around a little bit. Freeland's been pitching really good, and he just came off of a couple of starts where they were good, and then a couple of starts that were bad. But what I mean by that, he's not been pitching that good, is that he's not a big strikeout guy. He's a big ground ball guy, and his ground balls haven't been as big as I expected him to be. They're only 36%. what Colorado has done as their starting lineup of pitchers that they throw out there, every one of them is a 50% or higher ground ball guy. So they try to keep the ball on the ground instead of giving up the home runs like you can do in that stadium pretty easily. So I was just interested to look at that number, and then I thought to myself, why are people going crazy with this Freeland guy? And he's been good, but to give you an honest number, 4.34 xFIP for him, and Davies is 4.97. So they're pretty close, with the idea being that minus 150, I don't get it. So I think it's too high of a number there. Not that I'm going to be betting on either one of those two, but I kind of like the idea of looking at Freeland. He's not a big strikeout guy, so balls are going to get put in play, just like with Davies. He's not a big strikeout guy either. They're soft tossers, and soft tossers get hit. So that's their whole goal. Their whole goal is to get hit, make soft contact, get ground balls, and make plays at first base. So interesting game there for sure. You had mentioned like the Kansas City game against the White Sox. That's another one where I can understand the movement going to the White Sox. But again, this is where you got to know what your number is, and you can't follow the steam to a point, because at that point it becomes value to the other side. So if you know what the line should be, then you can actually create value in the underdog and go against steam sometimes. But if you're not early on the steam, then you don't be on the steam late because you're paying too high a price. And then the other one you talked about was the Houston and the Dodgers game. That's just a real interesting game for me, because McCullers is kind of their ace pitcher, and Buehler is the ace pitcher right now for the Dodgers. And I kind of think that this is going to be one of those high playoff atmosphere kind of games. And I would be highly surprised if this game went over the total. I think the total is 8.5 or something like that.
8.5 juiced minus 115 over, some minus 120 overs.
I think it would be hard to go over, and it's in Dodger Stadium, not in Houston. And I kind of like the idea. Buehler's going to pitch great. I think McCullers is going to pitch well, and I just think that this is going to be one of those games that people are a little tight, and that kind of thing. So we'll see what happens there. But your LA game with Texas and Minnesota with Cincinnati, I actually have plays on those. We can talk about those at the next round or whatever.
All right. Speaking of that, let's see if we can get to that for you. One moment. All righty. 1 second, sir. Oh, we got a comment. Comment from the peanut gallery.
Yeah, it's old George. George has been hanging around and doing some different things, and been dogging me all season long, and that's okay. It's no big deal. Typically what ends up happening is if you get on bad runs or you do different things or different stuff, you get the trolls out there that do a lot of different things. And he's been that way all season. So I don't worry about George or even respond to any of his things. But since he's on there, I just wanted to make sure that
Hi, George. We'll call him Curious George. How's that?
That's okay.
All right. Without further ado. The stage is yours, my friend.
Yeah, I've got three plays listed down here today, and one of them that I can't steer away from is the Los Angeles Angels today. I like the matchup against the Rangers in a sense that I think that the minus I got them at minus 110. I thought you said minus 119 earlier.
Yeah, we had Texas opening up at minus 104 at Pinnacle, and then we had the reverse line movement and the flip, And I see currently right now 119 at Pinnacle. The Vegas strip is up to 120, 123, even two 125s and a 130 at the Mirage. So you could be onto something.
Yeah, I played the game at minus 110, and I was looking at the game when they were minus 105, 105. And the issue here is that even though the Angels are hitting poorly currently, it's the matter that that Suarez is a better pitcher than what Lyles is, and Lyles is off of one of his good games, and Suarez is off of one of his worst games. So Suarez, he's got a 4.80 Sierra number, and Lyles is a 5.27. And that's not great for either pitcher. But besides the fact, Texas is going to be the worst team in the American League, and the Angels are more of a 500 type team. And going in, if you're a pick'em or you're a small favorite in that regard, that means that your team is much better, especially on the road, than Texas is. So when I did my numbers, I had the number around 125 is where I think that LA should have been. And you're telling me it's got there. I wouldn't go higher than 125. I paid it at 110. So if you can find it anywhere between 110 and 120, I think you're getting some value there. And if you're doing it at 125, okay, but I wouldn't go higher than that. So maybe missed out, but there maybe that's still getting in on the steam if you get it. But I like that game. And the other game that you had talked about was that Minnesota game against Cincinnati. And this is kind of an interesting game too, because where I'm looking at Kenta Maeda from Minnesota is he has turned things around dramatically since the start of the season. His game score over his last 7 starts is a 57, which is almost ace-like, and that's what he was doing last year. His Sierra number is 2.95, which is the best on the board today, even beating Wheeler. So I like the fact that he's a really good pitcher so far in the last 7-8 starts, last month or so. And Mahle, he's one of these guys that I think might have hit the wall a little bit. His last 7 starts for Cincinnati is a game score of 46. So that's below average, whereas his game score for the season's a 53. His Sierra number's a 5.03. His xFIP's a 5.23. So you got a 2-run advantage with Maeda. So I'm going to stay away from the bullpen here, and I took Maeda plus 115 in the first 5 innings. Now, I'm not sure if it's still that number because I know that's been shrinking down a little bit, but that's the number that I took, and I would say you're good on that number all the way down to even. If you take him all the way down to even, I think you're okay on that number. And then the last one that I liked is I have to bet against John Lester today. John's pitching for St. Louis. It's his first time out with St. Louis, and I know that he's a veteran and a war horse, and he's been around for a while. But the issue here is that he's just overmatched against Fried today. Fried, his last 7 starts is a game score 54. John Lester's last 7 starts is a game score 34. So John's going to struggle. There's a lot of hits that Atlanta can get. So I like the Atlanta number. I got 127. I wouldn't go higher than 130. I think we're paying 5 to 10 cents premium for Atlanta in this game, but I'm okay with that. Just as long as you don't go past the 130. Those are what I played today, Jeff.
I'm trying to see if I can pull up something for you. 1 second here. Let's see. Let's see if they give it to us. They've been very cranky of late. And survey says, nope, they're not up there. Yeah. The board itself today, again, some stuff really jumped out at us initially. I love your 3 thoughts there as well. For us, we'll be taking a look at some first 5s, seeing what they're going to give you with Wheeler. Obviously, we see an edge with Wheeler versus Corbin there. Don't trust either back ends. And if you watched yesterday, it was kind of comical. No one wanted to win there. definitely agree. Lester has, maybe he goes to St. Louis and he drinks the juice or something. I don't know, but he's been horrendous. Not going to obviously be able to get into the Yankees' first five. Um, tell me this, I didn't check this box. The Toronto Cleveland, Plesac versus Ryu, only at 202. Does that smell a little to you? I know Plesac's been pitching a little better. Smell a little low to you, or are they waiting for, you think, the public to push, Toronto up?
Well, I looked at that game and I listed it as a possibility, but I listed it at Rio minus a half a run in the first 5 innings at minus 135. I just didn't want to pay 135 on a minus a half a run. What I liked about that game for Toronto is that Rio is pretty consistent and he doesn't pitch against Cleveland that often. Plesac, though, hasn't pitched against Toronto that often. So I like him at home, but I try to figure out how to play him at home, because if you put him in the run line, it's just you're missing out. And then if you look at the first five, you're missing out. And Plesac, he's one of those guys that is an average pitcher to below average pitcher. I mean, his last 7 starts, game score is a 45.7. It's one of the things that is interesting. So it is what it is, and I like Toronto at home. They're hitting pretty well, but the other side of that I looked at, and I just pulled it up a second ago, and I'll tell you right real quick. If you look at the Cleveland Indians lineup, hitting wise, in the last 7 days, they have Ahmed Rosario, Jose Ramirez, and Franmil Reyes all over 2.5 offensive WAR in 3 days, or in 7 games. So that's a pretty big number for a team that doesn't hit well. And if you think about it, Jose Ramirez and Franmil Reyes in 6 games in the last 7 days have hit 3 home runs each. So that tells me that if you're going to play a minus half a run, or if you're going to play minus 1.5, you might get caught here. The Blue Jays may win the game for sure, but at the same time, if they win the game, it might be a 4-3 kind of game, or something along those lines, or maybe even a 5-4 kind of game, just because the Indians have found some power over the last 6 days or so. So I figure that this game's one of those scenarios where I just decided to stay off of it, even though I do like Toronto's situation.
And lastly, I'm going to call this kind of sort of a trap if you read everything into it. The Red Sox finally got a day off, coming off a 3-game sweep. Thank you, Scotty, for that. But though you could have went up 2 full games and you lost yesterday, so you're 1 game up on us. Richards versus Peralta at Detroit, and I can tell you, since Spider Tack, Richards and Perez have not been good. And Cora is basically doesn't care. You're gonna muscle through 5 innings. I don't care what's going on out there. You got to figure it out. You're not taxing my bullpen. And they only opened up at 134. They're getting pushed to 140. Any numbers on Peralta? Because I think they're kind of a live dog, or the anti-Garrett Richards.
Well, here's the interesting thing that I saw with Peralta, right? I talk about WPA, win percentage added, and you would think that, like with Richards, for example, he's not going to do good in clutch situations, and he doesn't. He's a negative number. It's actually minus 0.37, which is a below zero's average, right? So it's 30% below average, 35% below average right now. And what's interesting, Peralta has pitched to a point where it's pretty good. Over his last 7 starts, he's got a game score of 53. Which is just a little bit above average. His last start, he got bombed. He threw a 15, which is, it's going to happen to any pitcher. But I will say this, his WPA is 0.65. So that's to the good. So that's 65% better than an average pitcher in what he's doing in clutch spots. So, for example, that kind of offsets some of his numbers and makes him tougher to beat. So when you look at the numbers, Richards is a 4.50 Sierra number and Peralta 5.29. Neither one of them are that good. They're both in the red. But it does make a difference where Peralta is going to try to get out of clutch spots. Richards has a hard time getting out of clutch spots. So it tells me that Detroit probably has a reasonable chance to stay close as long as Peralta's in the game. So if I was going to play that game, I would be looking at it as the first 5, not necessarily when Peralta's out of the game.
One moment here. All right. There you go. Just goofing around here. So, anyways, the board really shapes up. I think there's a lot of chances here. Now it's only 12:39. We'll have a handful of hours to dive in there and to take a look at. We've been very successful the last 2 months, especially the last 6 weeks on those first 5s. I think there is some advantageous spots. Again, when we talk about the starting pitchers, now for instance, I don't have the number in front of me because the website that we use they're not up yet. But Wheeler versus Corbin. Corbin has not been good of late. Wheeler has been lights out. It's a 168, 170. Obviously, we're not going to play that. That's the full game. The first 5, my guess would be Phillies, probably money line would be around 180. I would guess that minus the half run, you could probably get in around that 125-ish area, which, again, Wheeler versus Corbin would be a good spot maybe to dive into.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right here, Jeff. Minus 190 at one of the sites I use for the money line, and run line minus a half run, minus 125.
Yeah. So again, that's a good spot to get in. We've been blessed. We've been fortunate. When you do the half runs, again, a tie you lose. And a lot of times people will go the other way and take the plus half run, and it's almost like they can't take them as a dog, but they're begging for it at least to be a tie. And ties happen, but I'd rather lose 110, 115, 120, 125 on a half run than wheeling out Wheeler for the first 5 minus 190. Thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah, no question. I mean, that's the issue, right? I mean, the issue is how do you play these games and how do you get in on these big spreads? And the truth of the matter is if you're making your own number and say, for example, you have the Phillies today, and I'm just going to make it up. Say you have the Phillies in a full game and you got them minus 200, and you can get them at minus 167 or minus 170. That's value, even though it's a big spread. So you should be looking at where you see value, even though it's a large number. That's the number you want to play. However, I would say this: that's very rare that happens, and the reason is because those big favorites like that are what the sports books are begging you to bet on, because they don't care if you're betting minus 200. They don't have to pay out as much. And not only that, when you lose, it's kind of one of those kind of things. And it is. I mean, it's just like, okay, what are you doing? Make smart bets, make things that are advantageous with the number and with whatever analysis you're using.
Yeah, and last week, I'll close here with this. Last week, we released 2 games, went 2-0. I left Melee and the Reds first 5 on the desk, and it won. And my thought process here was the game was a pick'em. The full 9-inning game was a pick'em, yet Melee was minus 130 first 5. So they're basically giving you that signal that says, hey, We think the Reds got a good opportunity in the first 5, but from there on out, we value. I think they might have been playing the Brewers. Maybe it was. We like the Brewers in the back end, which you usually should, versus the Reds in their back end.
Yeah, you're going to see that. I think that you see that a lot. To be honest, you'll see depending on what team it is, you're going to see a lot of first 5 different numbers, even on the on the money line, than you will in the full game. And then if you switch the run lines number, you're going to see that too. And I haven't seen it for a while, but there it is. There's a number. You can bet. Oh, it's not up. There we go. You can bet second halves in these games, or used to be able to, and not as many sports books offer them anymore. And that's because you really got to handicap the bullpen. So that's a very difficult thing to do these days. But if you really have a good feel for what's going to happen in the back end of the game, it's true that you have an edge over everyone else that's playing if you can actually handicap the bullpen, because the bullpen is something that everybody's discarding anymore. They're just saying, okay, I don't want to deal with the bullpen, so we're just going to do first 5. But if you really can get into the bullpen and have a good understanding of what's going to happen in the back end of the game, you can bet the second half of the game and the full game, and then you can really look at some of the values that presents. I just don't go deep enough that way into the bullpen, because it throws out the idea who's going to pitch. And the truth of the matter is, with the way the managers run these days, it's hard to say who's going to throw in the bullpen anymore. I mean, you have no idea. I mean, shoot, it's crazy. And especially like with the Rays, man, they throw anybody. But they lock them up.
And I think with the in-game wagering after literally every inning, that's why the second half action is kind of gone away from it. So in other words, the books will take their stand in the full game. They'll give you the under/over. They'll give you the first 5. They'll give you team totals, and then after the first pitch, you're on your own. You want to dive into a live game situation where some people were comical yesterday. When the Jays were down 2-0. Hey, I can get a great price on the Jays, and once they tied it 2-2. They go back to minus 230, 240. Well, they lose 5-2 in extras. And the other game was the Giants. They were up 7-1 last night, Scotty, and that game got tied at 8-8. And so I saw some people jumping in live on the Giants, and they were fortunate. They scored 3 in the 10th, and they won 11-8 there. So there's a million ways to skin this cat for sure. And the funny part about this, Scott, is this: we're in August 3rd, so we got basically one more month of this grind. And then what happens is, once it's September 1st, 95% of the world forgets about baseball. It's all football. And meanwhile, you got teams and series with teams that need to win to get in. And you can really, really find some great values then.
And the kids get called up. So it's kind of fun to watch some of the kids play and where you see them and kind of get a future look. I just my thoughts on the end of this season are going to be is that I hope it's one that's pretty epic, because I don't know that we're going to have a baseball season in 2022, and we probably will have at some point in time. But boy, oh boy, those negotiations are going to be something where, I mean, they won't be able to decide if they want to tie their left shoe before the right shoe. And if they can figure out what they're going to do and how this is all going to play out, hopefully they can get it all done and get it done the right way. So I'm hoping that it's a very good, very come down to the wire kind of thing. I hope the Reds get in the mix so that the National League isn't just about everybody who's already in already, and there's somebody involved there. I think the American League, you got 3 teams with a spot for 2. Thinking about the winner of the AL East, then the second place person in the team in the AL East, and then that means the Yankees and the Oakland A's. Who's going to be the third team in? And then the fourth one to drop off. I don't think we're going to see big runs to get in there unless Toronto does something crazy and gets a big run. So they got the pitcher they needed. So we'll just see what happens with Toronto as how they come through. But it's going to be fun. I hope it's entertaining. I hope it's enjoyable. I hope the playoffs are really good. I hope the pitchers throw well and we have really good games, because that's what baseball is. I mean, when it's played at the highest level and it's played well, it's really fun to watch.
And listen, baseball used to be America's game. It was our pastime. Then we go through the steroid era. We went through a stoppage. The game is slowed down, and it's the one sport that won't change the game because of the traditionalists and the purists. We go through some scandals. We go through the Astros with the cans. We go through COVID. And I know these guys, they're in a union and they're fighting for all kinds of rights. I get that part of it, okay? But I know this is going to fall on deaf ears. I know myself and yourself understand this. I just hope they listen, because I'm telling you right now, if they're not ready and there's not baseball in April because of a stoppage, you might as well blow the game up. Okay, they already had their stoppage again because of COVID. Okay, they went to 62 games. They tried to salvage a season. Okay, if there is no baseball in April, and I don't care even if it's delayed till July and we're playing another half a season, I'm telling you, you'll still have the NHL playoffs, Stanley Cup. You will have the NBA playoffs and championship, and that thing went to July, the end of July. Okay, and then guess what happens this week? It's called NFL Hall of Fame game, Canadian Football League, which I know a lot of people don't watch. But the point is, it won't get missed by 99.9% of the millennials for sure, and most people out there. So you better do it, and you better do it right, or the game's done. It's done.
Yeah, it's if you remember back to when they were negotiating what they were going to do with the COVID situation and how much stuff was bantered back and forth, the truth of the matter is no deal was ever made. They were just told this is what we're doing from baseball standard, and because of the way that the contracts are written, they just were forced to play out the season. They didn't make a deal. There was no deal on the player side. And it was a battle, and so I don't foresee this negotiation to be very pleasant. I hope it's not something that they drag out in the media, because it'll be ugly and a lot of other crazy things will go on. And the truth is that I think there's been so much strife and labor negotiation problems with the baseball that people are over it. The one way to think about it is owners are just billionaires. They make so much money, they go to sleep the next morning, they wake up and they made $1 million. The baseball players are millionaires. So you end up with millionaires trying to fight for their piece of the billionaires' money. And then you got guys like us who are trying to figure out how enjoyable the games are and who's going to win the games and that stuff. But as a fan, we're thousandaires. We're thousandaires. We're like, hey, we want to go to the games and we want to have a good time. I was watching a clip of Rizzo the other day when his first at bats for the Yankees, and ain't nobody there. When you look around the stadium, there's a bunch of empty seats. That it doesn't show that way because they get a lot of corporate tickets that buy all this stuff, but it's a lot of empty seats. And so they need to get this thing right so that everything is right and the stadiums are full. People really do like baseball. It's a matter of getting people there and making it affordable to the thousandaires out here who are trying to support the game so the millionaires can play it and the billionaires can do all their stuff with it.
Yeah, and just watching yesterday the NBA opening of the free agency, the monies that is getting thrown around in this NBA, and I know they're global, I know they're amazing overseas, China, Japan, the money is endless. But when you're talking now a supermax contracts, $250 million, these guys are making, some of these guys are making well over a half and almost 3/4 of $1 million per game. per game.
Yeah. It's funny because if you were to break it down that way and you were to go to the general manager or the owner of the team and go, is he really worth that?
No.
In the amount of money you're paying him to wins and losses and that kind of thing. But they don't look at it probably in terms of wins and losses. I'm sure they look at it in terms of return on investment for dollars. Is that guy going to be something that is returning the investment and then growing the worth of the team? And it's just like everything. And we talked about it the other day, what the Dodgers are paying versus what the Cleveland Indians are paying. So, if you got a team out there spending $250 million and a team spending $47 million, it seems more like it to me. The better solution is not so much to have a salary cap, but in Major League Baseball or almost any sports to have a minimum cap. You need to be able to spend something to put a competitive team on the field versus the teams that are out there overspending and getting all these different players, because I don't think it's fair to pick and choose what regulations you're going to have and what trades you're going to veto. And, the Dodgers can't go out and sign, Scherzer and Trey Turner, but somebody else can. You can't do that. So you got to figure out what the checks and minuses are.
All right, Scotty, to refresh the memory for everyone that's still watching, give them the 3 plays to take a look at today.
Yeah, I'm on the Angels and Suarez today. I got him at -110. I think he's good up to about 125. I wouldn't go higher than that. Maybe I don't know. He was getting steamed up. I'm on Minnesota with Maeda in the first 5 innings today. I got him at +115. And I'm on Atlanta and Fried at -127. Really more of a play against John Lester today and the St. Louis Cardinals.
All right, from myself, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, Scotty Webb, a nice 50 minutes today. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same bat station. Always remember this. Bet with your head, not your heart. If you have a problem, pick up the phone. There's an 800 number. There's help there for you. Best of luck today. Have a blessed day, and let's cash some tickets.